Oh, that's hot. That's hot.
Okay, so I think it's best that I lay my cards out on the table up front. In case you couldn't tell from my trailer reaction video, this remake of Aladdin was one of my least anticipated movies of the year. I think I would have probably skipped seeing it in theaters if I wasn't going to review it for the channel. That said, I was pleasantly surprised by how much I ended up not hating this movie. Overall, in fact, I'd say that I came out of it mostly positive.
There is a lot of gray area.
This is definitely not a bad film, and I could see myself maybe watching it again someday down the line. That said, it's by no means a masterpiece, and it doesn't hold any sort of candle to the original. Yeah, I know the original is like a zillion years old fairy tale, but for the sake of simplicity, I'm just gonna refer to the 1992 animated movie throughout the video as the original, since for all intents and purposes, this new film is an adaptation of that film, not of the original story, which I'm pretty sure actually takes place in China? Anyway, back to the movie. The first 20 minutes or so were pretty rough, if I'm being honest. A couple of minutes in, I was already settling in for this film to be a total train wreck on the level of Dumbo back in March. However, the film gradually wore me down, and by the time Will Smith's genie enters the picture, the film had improved dramatically. Like the original genie, played by Robin Williams, this character is easily the best part of the movie, and he injects a lot of charm and humor into the proceedings. The visual effects on the floaty blue version of the genie are still kind of spotty like they were in that first trailer, but it seems like they probably realized that early on because he spends most of the movie in his human form, so it never really becomes a huge issue. I also quite like the new angle this movie is going for with Jafar. Rather than the somewhat one-dimensional bad guy he is in the original, this Jafar actually has some depth to his character that makes him feel more like a real person, and that's great, on paper. In execution, unfortunately, the actor playing Jafar is easily the worst in the main cast, which really put a damper on what I could tell they were going for with him. So, despite the fact that this new Jafar is technically written a lot better as a character, the original Jafar is still infinitely more entertaining and memorable. There are still a few moments, though, where the new Jafar is unintentionally hilarious, so at least there's that. In contrast to the live-action Beauty and the Beast, where Emma Watson's singing was all noticeably auto-tuned, it seems like they cast this film's leads with the singing parts in mind. The two main actors are great singers. Naomi Scott, in particular, is absolutely fantastic, so much so that they've added in a Disney princess song for Jasmine. Yeah, you know, I never realized it, but Jasmine is pretty much the only Disney princess I can think of from a musical who never actually had one before. Unfortunately, the trade-off for these strong singing performances, however, is that these two are both much more talented singers than they are actors. Don't get me wrong, they're definitely okay, certainly not terrible, but there were a few dialogue-driven scenes that felt a little stilted and unnatural.
What are you doing?
Sometimes, princess. Sometimes you just have to take a
What just happened?
There is a lot of gray area.
Will Smith's charisma and comedic timing are mostly enough to compensate, but scenes that don't include either him or any of the various comedic relief, like Abu or the magic carpet, tend to drag a bit. There are also a few occasions where the movie will just grind to a halt and randomly start focusing in on some tertiary character or another, like the captain of the guard or Jasmine's attendant. There's this really big moment in the third act that's supposed to be like an emotional turning point in the film, but it all hinges on this character who I don't even think had been given a name up till then. And suddenly the movie starts pretending that you're supposed to care about him or his choices as if he'd been a central character the entire movie. It's just like, what? Who is this guy? What's going on? I did, however, still find enough to enjoy about this movie. The production design, costumes, props, sets, everything really on the technical end is great. The film is directed by Guy Ritchie, who's had a bit of a tough break recently, and he does a good job with it. The big iconic scenes from the original that you'd expect to be there are all done justice in live action, and it even managed to introduce some fun original moments that I enjoyed, like the fancy party scene that you see briefly in the trailers and the big action set piece at the end. I also found this film to be more consistently enjoyable than either Beauty and the Beast or Cinderella, and it's leagues better than Dumbo. God damn, even thinking about that movie pisses me off. Curiously, there were a few specific details and innocuous lines of dialogue which suggested to me that if this movie does well, they might actually adapt the originals to direct-to-video sequels to the big screen as well. Wouldn't that be something?
There is a lot of gray area.
So anyway, yeah, Aladdin. It's still a totally pointless movie, and the original is still much better, which make this movie's flaws all the more glaring since that movie's basically perfect. But for what it's worth, this isn't bad. If you're on the fence, I'd say check it out once it's available to stream, but don't rush out and see it in theaters. And if you like my review, you'd be doing me a huge favor if you could hit that like button, subscribe if you're new, and ring the bell to stay updated on the latest videos. Leave a comment down below with any of your thoughts on Aladdin, and check out some of the other great stuff I've got up here on my channel. As always, thanks so much to all of you guys for watching, and take care.
There is a lot of